somebody going to do the small talk with the crowd, or are we just going to sit in quiet?
Several people coming in. Welcome to all of you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're from.
Hi, can you pull up the slides?
Oh, hang on. Yes, just a second.
All right, great. Hi guys, thank you so much for joining us today. From whichever part of the world you're joining us from. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We appreciate you joining us for the Authentic Storytelling for Maximum Impact session today. It's day 5. I know some of you must have attended all the sessions throughout the day, throughout the week, and you must be really tired. So we really thank you from the bottom of our hearts to take our time and join us here during the Catalyzing Change Week 2022. It's an amazing week of events and activities that offer a unique opportunity to engage with the world's most innovative change makers. If you could go to the next slide, please.
Okay.
As they collaborate, co-create, and share learnings, insights, and best practices along the way. Next one, please. Yeah. So we know how passionate you are about bringing about the changes that are needed to achieve the SDGs by 2030. We now have just a shade over 7.5 years to go. So there's a heightened sense of urgency, and that's one of the main reasons why all this is happening, around the world. And thanks to Catalyst, we have the opportunity to, sit across the screen from each other and discuss these ideas that can bring about systemic change. So in this session, if you could just go down a slide, please. So this session is a 4-act session. You'll see participants talking about 4 different modules that all constitute different areas of authentic storytelling. And the modalities are, speaker presentations, film screenings, panel discussions, audience polls, and direct question and answer in the form of engagement for our customers here. So at this time, if the attendees could please write their names and email addresses in the chat box, that would be wonderful for us to, build up on this ongoing repository of work. So if you could get to the next screen, please. So we have with us today a really interesting mix of people, social entrepreneurs, who are combining different methodologies and frameworks from different areas that all address the acceleration of the SDGs in their own way. And some of these include the 5P framework, the people, prosperity, planet, partnership, and peace, and how they kind of blend this with the 3R approach, which is reduce, reuse, recycle, among some of the other frameworks that we'll talk about during the presentation. So please join me in welcoming Rikki Quintana from HoonArts, Katja Noordam from Fair Change.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you. Welcome and thanks for joining.
Mikey Leung from Digital Storytellers. And unfortunately, Sally couldn't be here. She had a small incident at home, so we're going to have to carry on without her. And our technical support, Michelle Galau from Indonesia. So we could move on to the next slide. So that brings us to the question, why this panel and why now? So as we all realize, the existing models are failing, like be it, social exchange, collective exchange, different kinds of economies, we really need to look at different ways that are, simpler and more impactful. And one such mode is a storytelling mode that kind of comes up as a commonality, a common theme between them that can be leveraged very nicely. So we need to use storytelling to its maximum potential. Then, there's a strong need around the world to kind of believe in a more multidisciplinary approach towards problem solving. And that is, another reason why we've come together from different parts of the world to co-create this document. It's the first of its kind ever. And we really believe in the theory of change that lays emphasis on harnessing the power of the collective, and we really believe in the collective. And with this, Rikki, if you could play up the people's report.
Yes. Let's see.
Thank you so much. Wasn't that wonderful? Kind of sets a tone for us. The presentation.
And let's see, we'll go back here. And I will launch the first poll.
Yes, please launch the poll. And while the people answer the poll, I'll just quickly address why storytelling. As storytelling provides a narrative for change. It connects people's deepest motivations and promotes a more radical action. Stories not only connect people, but they really drive change. We must learn to tell and listen to new sets of stories, from around the world, and the stories that help create the world that we want to live in the future.
The results are coming in now. on the poll.
Yeah.
And remember, there's 2 questions, so make sure you respond to both questions.
So we have about 61% participation. If we could all please just take a second and answer, which one do you feel that you're gravitating to, you know, or it could be all of them. And if you feel that we've missed out on an issue, please enter that in the chat box.
Okay.
We can end the poll now.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
we can share the results later.
Yes.
Or if you take a screenshot of it now, that's also fine. Whatever works.
And I'm okay. And then we'll go back to our presentation. Let's see, I have to.
So now we'll quickly take you through the session modules that we have planned for you and the speaker that's going to be talking about a particular session. So like we mentioned, there are 4 modules in this session. Module number 1 looks at storytelling principles, how capture and tell meaningful stories, and Katja will be taking us through that. Then we have the common challenges and effective storytelling, which Rikki will handhold us through. Then there's a session on the mental models for authentic storytelling that I will be taking us through. Mikey will take us through producing your story, the logistics and technology that go behind creating a compelling story. And then we'll all chip and chime in and wrap up and share the next steps with you. So over to you, Katja.
Hello. Yes, thank you. Can everybody hear me, see me? All right.
Yes.
Great. So yeah, thanks everyone for being here. I see we have people in from different parts of the world, and we as panelists are also spanning the globe. So that's yeah, really exciting. Just very briefly, my name is Katja Noordam. I'm Dutch, Belgian by origin, but I like to call myself a citizen of the world by choice. I've spent the greatest part of my working life in different countries, and I just recently came back to the Netherlands from Colombia, where I've been living for almost 15 years with my daughter, and that's where I founded my business Fair Change. And we offer training, tools, advice to purpose-driven businesses to help them grow their positive social impact and communicate their impact in a captivating way. So that's what brings me here. Let's dive into our today's topic. So without a lot of introduction, I would like to start with a video in a second. I would like you all to watch that video. Then you will be asked to, in breakout rooms, answer several questions that I will show you after the video, because what we really like to surface is your opinions about effective storytelling to, yeah, to start this this session. So let's watch the video. Rikki, thanks.
Hang on, let me get the right video up since we have multiple videos queued up. There we go. Have I got the right video up?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yeah, there we go.
proporcionarnos el café más exquisito del mundo.
Muchas gracias por hacer el estupendo café que cada día mejora nuestra mañana.
Papá, mire lo que te trajeron.
¿Qué, mi amor?
Aquí dice que
¿Qué?
en ocasión del Día Internacional del Café,
Las personas de todo el mundo dan gracias a
quienes hacen posible la existencia de la bebida que tanto aman el café, dan gracias a los cultivadores.
ti, mamá.
A ti, papá. Papi.
¿Qué, mi amor? Gracias. Sí, son bonitos. Bueno, mi amor. Bueno.
Oh, you need to unmute.
Yes, I pushed the button, but I didn't click on it well. You can hear me now, right?
Yes.
So yeah, that was the video. Before we are assigned, you will be assigned randomly to a few breakout rooms. Let's just show the questions we have for you. If we can go to the next slide, Rikki.
Yeah, just a second. There we go.
And the next one, yes. So briefly discuss, you'll have 5 minutes and briefly discuss this Illy video from the famous Italian coffee maker. And I would like you to discuss, what do you think was the main message of the story this video tells? And do you think this story was told in a captivating and convincing way? If yes, why? If no, why not? So we'll have 5 minutes. It's, as you know, marketers say that there is first impressions are made in just split seconds. So it's really about how this video came across. And we'll then ask for each group to assign a speaker, a representative who will quickly share their findings, your findings, when we're back on the main stage. And I'll also share mine. So let's go to the breakout rooms.
Okay.
So Rikki will assign the breakout rooms randomly. So yeah, you want just.
Hello. Interesting how we got assigned to the same breakout room.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Did you see enough of the video to be?
No, my connection was cut and so I had technical issues.
Okay. Basically, it was a video by a coffee company where coffee consumers were writing personal notes to the producers, thanking them for the coffee. And you saw the various members of the producer group getting the messages, smiling, and what I saw there was that they were appreciated that that their work was appreciated by the ultimate consumers.
I see.
That was my reaction, and it had an emotional impact. It was heartwarming because you would see the children smiling, and they had the children taking the messages to bed, and you could imagine them all feeling appreciated.
Okay.
Solomon, if you unmute, do you have anything you'd like to add to the discussion about the coffee video?
Hello, I'm sorry, I just joined right now, and I guess I'll just sit in and kind of get a sense of how the conversation is going.
Okay.
But I'm happy to connect with you all, and yeah.
Well, welcome to the session. We're delighted to have you here. It's exciting to see how many people we have from so many different places around the world.
Thank you.
And we'll get sent back to the main room in about 20 seconds.
For how long is the session?
90 minutes total.
Okay.
It will actually run a little bit over, like 5 minutes over that.
Okay.
Yes. So, oh, there are polls showing up. Yes.
Oh, let me close that. Sorry.
Maybe no worries. Maybe we can go back to the slides, and yeah, let's have a quick discussion. I would like to hear some opinions. I was in a room with Leslie, and she really shared some interesting thoughts. I don't know, Leslie, if you want to share them with all of us, or maybe someone else who wants to share their ideas about what this was. This a good story? Was it told in a convincing way, in a captivating way? Did you like it? Didn't you like it? Who wants to share?
Elizabeth, why don't we start with you? You had some really nice points that we covered in our breakout room. So maybe we could start with Elizabeth.
Yeah, Elizabeth?
Hello. Yes, hello. I was just saying that when it comes to storytelling with a video, and specifically when you try to bring emotions, that we should basically work with our emotional brain. I mean by that as soon you put too much text, it becomes an intellectual bound and not an emotional one, as we have two brains, and that we should make the distinction. So that was my first remark, that at the beginning I didn't really understand where we were going with the images, because we had a lot of text to read, which on top was not very really easy to read. At least I'm checking you out now with the iPhone, so it didn't work. So that's my first remark in terms of focusing more on, we should focus more on the images to bring in emotion.
Mm-hmm. Nice, thank you. Anyone else who'd like to share their opinion about this video?
Katja, may I? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Katja?
Yes,
Okay.
please, go ahead.
We were just three of us, and it was very interesting. It was more making the consumer aware of behind the screen what happens by the producers, and also giving gratitude from the consumer side, that it can be emotionally motivating for the producers. But we also heard the other side of, it was Shiva, I don't know if he's there, and he said that it is more, maybe a more marketing stunt, seeing the people, how they are living and things like that, of how they are, whether they are earning enough and that sort of things. Let's say equity is there or not. And Sujata was also there, and she also said it is indeed making the consumer aware of what goes behind the screen. That yeah, and I think it is more the gratitude. If you, it's just a small thing, gesture, gratitude, being thankful that you get your morning cup of coffee with so much hard work, can also give a smile to the producers. That's what we discussed. Thank you.
Okay, nice. Thank you. Maybe one last comment from someone else who has something to add to all the things that have already been said.
In my group, we discussed the fact that I kind of felt that they were trying to create an emotion in a very artificial way, with the sad music and the children being all emotional about their parents' work. And I felt like it was a try of manipulation that I could felt too strongly to appreciate completely the video.
Okay, thanks. Thanks a lot. So yeah, really interesting, different perspectives on this video, and I think this reflects a bit what happened when we showed the video not so long ago in Colombia in a similar exercise, in a workshop on using storytelling for marketing. And this video was produced in 2016 by the famous Italian coffee brand Illy, who imports coffee from many different places, among others Colombia. And with this campaign, they launched on International Coffee Day. Their purpose was to connect the consumers, the coffee drinkers all over the world, with the producers of the coffee, and showing them the realities of the people who grow the coffee they drink every day. So when we showed this video to a mixed Colombian expat audience of people who had been living in Colombia for a long time and who know the realities of the rural areas, their reaction was, is this fake? Is this real? Because this is not how people really live. This is not how smallholder coffee farmers live, their raw environments. This is not how they talk. This is not what they would say. And by pure coincidence, because it was a general workshop and people could randomly register, and by pure coincidence, among the people who were in that workshop was an Italian Colombian woman who had been working at Illy at the time this campaign was produced. So she told us about the beautiful idea behind the campaign. They really gathered the reaction, the handwritten reactions, written down by coffee drinkers all over the world, in bars in New York, in Amsterdam, in Iceland, everywhere. They really transported all those messages to Colombia, and they really delivered them to coffee farmers in the field. Only they used actors in the video to make it all look a bit more smoothly. So this was a really interesting example, I think, of a well-intended storytelling that didn't work out well, 100% well. Of course, there were different opinions. Some of the people liked them, but that largely missed its intended effect. So this is one of the things that can happen when we, as Western audiences, or as can be the case in a country like Colombia or wherever, urban video crews are going to the field and are registering, telling, capturing the stories of the people who do the hard work, who produce the products that enrich the lives of people in urban areas, in Western environments. So based on on-the-ground experience of myself, of my colleagues, of a lot of interviews we did, of a lot of companies, all large, medium-sized, we worked with, I came up with some principles, 8 principles of impact storytelling. Because if we set out to tell the stories of the people we want to showcase, of the people whose products and services we want to sell, we have the privilege to tell, we have to really do it in a thoughtful way. So just briefly, what do I mean? What do we mean when we talk about impact storytelling? That is a story that creates a significant change in the lives of the story owners, as I call them, the hardworking rural producers, the artisans, the micro businesses that produce products or services for other people, often in faraway contexts. Impact is also inspiring and educated the intended audiences. So educating them about the product, about its qualities, educating them as well about the people that make those products, and inspiring them to buy and to support the causes that the consciously produced and traded products intend to support. Authentic communicates real life experience in a truthful way, to say it briefly. So if we can go to the next slide. Why do we need principles of impact storytelling? Well, we have to set out with the right mindset, the right attitudes, the right behaviors to capture and share meaningful narratives, avoiding common mistakes that can affect the owners of the story. That can be cultural, social, even economic. Of course, we have to avoid impact washing, purpose washing, or whichever variety of greenwashing, social washing we see happening in the real world. And we really have to start from the basics of telling our stories well, because if not, we miss important opportunities for change, to improve systems and to improve lives. So quickly, because I don't think I have much time left, but what are those 8 principles of storytelling for positive impact? So the stories we tell should be genuine and honest. We should not make things up. We should not invent things, not embellish situations, preferably not use actors. Our story should be evidence-based and measurable. So we should have indicators in place that really demonstrate the quantitative and qualitative impacts of our interventions, of our support to the people who produce the products that we sell. What is the intended change that we bring about, and how are the lives of the people we support really improved? We should respect the rights and the dignity of the people whose stories we have the privilege to tell. We should build relations of trust with the people we work and whose realities we show. We can go to the next one. We should do no harm in to the social relations, to no economic harm, no cultural damage. We should create shared value, which means not just take a nice story, a beautiful story, but also give back. This can be really literal. There are some good practices of businesses or other organizations that go out in the field, tell the stories capture the stories of the people, and pay the people for their valuable time that they cannot spend producing, or that they cannot spend creating an income for their families, while they are providing us their beautiful images and their stories. It can also be a workshop, it can be a tool, it can be something we give back in return to the community. 7, a challenging one, balancing the needs of the story owners, ourselves as organizations, as businesses or NGOs, or whatever the nature of our organization is, and the audiences, the intended audiences, which can be a delicate balance. And yeah, my co-panelists will go more into detail about that in the upcoming modules. And finally, last but not least, the stories we tell should be positive and solution focused. So yes, we should picture the problem we want to solve, but we should do it in a solution focused way, and we should always show the people whose stories we tell as the owners of the solutions to their challenges. We should always show their resilience and show them as being in control of their future, because that's what they are. So yeah, that was just briefly laying the groundwork for what follows in the next modules. And before I hand over to Rikki, who will dive a bit deeper into the common challenges of storytelling, just sharing with you my data. I would love to be in touch, so you can find me here. We will also share this presentation afterwards, so you'll have the time to look back to this. But please connect, and yeah, Rikki, over to you.
Well, I'm Rikki Quintana. I'm the founder of HoonArts Fair Trade. I import handcrafted products made by small artisan groups in Central Asia, including Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, and Kyrgyzstan. I'm the only one focusing on these three countries and working on preserving preserving the cultural heritage of the artisan groups, as opposed to focusing exclusively on generating income for the groups. The reason I elected to choose the challenges is because I have a very small team, and the artisan groups that I work with have very small teams. And we would love to be able to produce those lovely, well-produced, cinematically beautiful videos, the rest of them that you'll see during the presentation. But that's not realistic in my world. So first, I wanted to just ask a volunteer or two if you could raise your hand, and I'd like to hear from one or two people from the audience to share some of the challenges you face in your organization in creating good storytelling with impact. Do I have anybody raising their hand? Colleen.
Yes, I can share my challenges. I work in an association which helps people to change their jobs and work in a field with more impact. And so we have whole weekends to help people think about themselves, about the job they want to have, and then they can change their jobs with our help. And the challenge we face is to share the stories of the people who experience these weekends and then effectively change their careers. And we still don't really know how to do it with maximum impact.
Okay, anybody else want to raise their hand? Oh, okay. I'm going to stop the share right now, and I have a poll here where I will ask all of you to share. There are two questions, and I'd like you to take a couple of minutes and click the challenges that you may face in your own organization in capturing stories the way you'd really like to do it.
And Rikki, just mentioning, I think Cameron raised his hand, so maybe you would like to share a challenge.
Okay, yeah, let me.
Everyone.
Okay.
Just very, very briefly, I'm working with a guy who's supporting girls in Sierra Leone, and our current project is setting them up with micro businesses to make menstrual cloth products. We need a sewing machine, etc. So we're doing a crowdfunding campaign. The challenge is getting the girls themselves to present what it's like for them and what it would mean for them to be able to do this, and just the skill of the interviewers on the ground in Sierra Leone, and the quality of the sound, and then getting accurate translations from their language into English, somehow translating all of that from the message of the girls themselves, who will be the beneficiaries, right through to the video for crowdfunding purposes. So that's my challenge that I wanted to mention.
The responses are coming in while people are going through the poll. Is there anybody else who would like to raise their hand and share some of their challenges? I know, Katja, you've talked, you and I have talked in the past about, even when working with larger organizations, you've faced some of these challenges. Why don't you mention a couple that you've experienced?
Yeah. Yeah, just one of the many things is how to capture good images. It was also mentioned in my module by someone from the audience, how important images are, often even more than words. So capturing good images is a challenge, because everybody, even in the most remote areas, I mean, not everywhere, of course, but very many people in this world, wherever they live, have mobile phones, or at least one of the people living in a village or a community has a mobile phone. So the basic technology is there, but then how do you capture nice pictures? How do you frame the subject, and how do you do the lighting well, etc. So that is a recurring challenge. Other things were mentioned as well by sorry, I forgot your name, the Cameron, that I've also come across a lot working with businesses who wanted to tell the stories of people in the ground, their suppliers, is our issues of how do people tell a story? What are the things that are worth sharing in a way that preserves the dignity of the people who tell the stories? Translation issues were mentioned. That's an important thing as well. So yeah, I mean, we could go on, and you've listed a lot of them, like summarized them well in the list of challenges. So yeah, this is just the point of the iceberg, I would say.
Okay, I will share the results of the poll now.
We have Kritika wants to come in real quick. So Kritika, if you will, please make your point.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that the challenges are indeed capturing the picture of somebody, because culturally also some people don't like to be on the camera, or are not allowed to be on the camera. What I do is I have written some books with these stories, but also it is then for audience who want to read. Not everybody wants to read. I know pictures make more impact than words. So I have books which sell, but not very much. But because I work with people, internationals, multinationals, and I'm an intercultural trainer. So to make the employers aware of the challenges the team has, people are afraid to lose their jobs, so they don't want to come. So I use their stories, but I don't name them. I don't name the organization, but I tell their stories. But only people who read the books are able to know what's happening. So it marginalizes the audience. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
That's great. And I think everybody is seeing the results. Every challenge that we included in the poll is faced by at least part of the audience. And we will capture this information and have that help guide us as we work on the toolkit that we will be working on. In my case, many of the same issues that you have mentioned come up and I thought I would play a couple of videos just to give you a little context. Both of these videos are clips for let me, I think I can see. These were captured when one of our artisans from Tajikistan was visiting in Albuquerque, and I had planned to capture some video with Munira because she was in the same time zone instead of 12 time zones away, and we would have time to do it. And lo and behold, it didn't happen as we had planned. We were capturing these videos on her last morning in Albuquerque, and we were doing it in a rush. And what I did was I took a couple of clips from these, and then I will run through some of the challenges that I see just from the raw data. I'm Rikki Quintana, the founder of HoonArts, and I'm here with Munira Akilova, who is the founder of her own brand in Tajikistan, Munir, as well as the designer and manager for a social impact organization, Armugan Handicrafts. And I wanted to ask you, Munira, what do you think is the most important way that working with HoonArts has impacted you? And this is the most important thing to you, not to me or what you think a Western buyer might want to hear, but how has working with me, with HoonArts, made a difference for you?
Working with HoonArts like empowered us, and we have tried, since we are working for 7 years, and we have passed several stages, and we have done a lot of the steps to enter the US market, and all what we have done, we have done with HoonArts. The most important is the support, and the support in the way that we have the same vision. Like, we don't want to just have the product handmade, done in Tajikistan, but for the European markets or for the Western market. The main thing that HoonArts impacted, and it's the support of our vision mostly, and it empowers me personally that we can do collaborative works and still keep our traditional patterns, keep our color combination, even we are using less colors. But most impact, I would say that it's empowerment. and to increase belief, increasing the self-esteem that the work we are doing is correct. If we are, after all the kind of fairs, all the festivals, we once again, it confirms to me that I'm in the right path. And what I'm doing with the local ladies, you know that we're working also in a distance about 500 miles in between, and it's hard to leave family and going to them. But when I'm coming to the villages and when we see the result of our work, when I see personally the shine in their eyes, I see that it's valuable and I need to do this.
Okay, that was the first one. And then I want to show a second one that is a little bit shorter. I'm Rikki Quintana, the founder of HoonArts, and I'm here with Munira. I apologize, that was the wrong one.
For me personally, it was hard to work on the camera, but the COVID pushed us to change ourselves, and now I'm fine with the camera. As for our ladies and sharing their stories and taking videos or the photos, I can tell again a story about this family. About they're both friends from the village. It's a part of obligation when you have a grant that you need to increase the visibility of the project. You need to write on your social media. So their photos were on Facebook. A person from their village, who works, most of them there in Russia, he called back home and said, you know, your wife is so famous and she's on the internet. And neighborhood started gossiping. So she's not a nice person, she's not a nice lady, that her face is open and she's online. And afterwards, the man, her husband I really appreciate him and I respect him that he said, this is my wife and this is my family. I know what they're doing and I don't care about your opinion. So this made us very happy because he once again supporting and understand what we are doing. So this kind of stories can happen everywhere. That's why in advance we're asking whether they're allowed to or not. So that's it.
And to shift back to our presentation, let's see, where did it go? We talked about the audience, but played the videos. In trying to capture the challenges, after I had recorded these clips, I realized that these clips were perfect examples of how wanting to create good stories, having taken multiple marketing courses and video courses and having spent money on equipment, I still faced a lot of challenges that produced what was not the quality I would like. And these fell into three categories. On the planning side, as I said, we didn't have time to adequately plan it. I did have the right person in terms of Munira, but I didn't have the ladies themselves there. And planning things like who's the target audience, what is the storyline. I didn't allow enough time. I had no clear call to action or intended outcome. Obviously, the quality of the video was not well planned out. I hate the angle of myself. We ended up doing it that way in front of a Zoom camera because it was fast. Measuring success of the the story. It was just a pure afterthought. In terms of the content, I had given thought to what were the questions I wanted to ask. And Munira and I have worked together for 7 years, so there's a strong level of trust with her, but you could see the difference between just her comfort level in speaking. Towards the end of the first one, you started to see her real personality, and it came through much more in the second one. Something that always happens when you're talking to people about their own experience is it's difficult to maintain a single storyline. People's narratives wander, but at the same time, you don't want to create a presentation that looks and feels scripted. Managing the length without sacrificing authenticity is always an issue. In this case, this was a topic that I knew that Munira and I were both very interested in. But if you're interviewing someone particularly remotely, then you need to have a topic that is of interest to both your intended audience and your speaker, so that their emotion will come through in the discussion. Conveying a sense of transformation is important, and it's difficult to capture. And then, of course, as many people have mentioned, including Munira, respecting the privacy, the cultural norms, the personality, and the dignity of the speaker. And then in logistics, which Mikey will talk more about, limited skills on the ground in capturing stories, limited financial resources to hire experts. If you're trying to, even if you can hire experts, you may not have that same level of trust between the actual expert, the videographer or photographer or interviewer that you have built up separately. That expert, even an expert may not understand the cultural norms, expectations, and limitations of dealing with the people who are captured in any images or videos or stories. Informed consent has become a really important issue to HoonArts because the Fair Trade Federation has just instituted a new code of conduct principle that members of the Fair Trade Federation are expected to create some sort of record-keeping log where we document that we have actually discussed with the subjects of stories that we share, that how the information will be used, where it will be used, and for how long it will be used, as well as checking back in with them regularly to see if they're still, if it's still okay to keep sharing particular stories or images. And then, of course, all the wonderful issues of lighting, resolution, ratios, formatting for different social media platforms, just the size of a digital image, a digital file, and how you transfer it. And then, of course, processing and editing time. And I have one more quick poll. This one will come. Let me.
Rikki, just excuse me, we are running over. We only have 30 minutes to go. So I think we could hold off on the poll.
Okay.
Because, yeah, you know, we've gone over 10 minutes. So please,
Okay.
let's move on with the presentation.
Yes.
So let me go back.
And we have a lot of interesting topics still to cover. So Mikey's next. Gautam is next.
Mikey will come
Gautam
in
is next.
a little bit.
Yeah.
So let me mentioned in the beginning of the piece, the session, that this is an action-packed session for you. And what we've done is that we've kind of combined different approaches that are all addressing, how do we make impactful, authentic storytelling easy and accessible for people who may or may not have the tech know-how, they may not know the language, but as long as, they have a custodian, a champion on their end, they can make use of this toolkit and leverage the information that we are, going to share with you. So my session looks at creating conceptual models, mental models that, we need to socialize so that people know that these are the high-level topics that can, kind of govern the storytelling route for them. And but before I do that, just take a few seconds to talk about the organization that I represent. So I joined Catalyst through the conduit of the Catalyst market with a product of ours, Jaggery. But Jaggery is not the only thing that we do. We are a, our organization goes by the name Meaningful Design Foundation, and we are a women-led social enterprise connecting design actions to positive change. We work exclusively with other social enterprises and social impact organizations from around the world. And we think of ourselves as an energy, as a force that tries to bring about positive disruption, almost like a lab, that launches goal-driven initiatives to try and make the world a better place by accelerating the SDGs. And you must be wondering, how do we do that? That sounds like really heavy. So we do that by taking a praxis-based approach, which essentially marries theory to practice. So it's guided, always guided by some theoretical element of some field of interest or some linkage that we found between different silos and different frameworks. And, we take a cross-disciplinary approach and, marry that to best insights from around the world to diagnose problems, like social equity or climate change or environmental, degradation, child abuse, child labor, whatever the issue is, we kind of try and take an iterative and a reflective, view of things. So next slide, please. So this is the matrix, the organization matrix. Meaningful Design Foundation has three, initiatives that it's working on, some live, some in incubation. So Jaggery, the product vertical, is live. Through this we, work a lot with social equity, climate change, and look at it through a regenerative lens. We work with waste. So, you could take a quick takeaway would be waste to value. Reset is an ecosystem building initiative, and Earth Fighting For is our consultancy and media production arm. So next slide, please. So this brings us to the question, so what do we mean by authentic storytelling? All of you must have seen that in the title of the piece. So to just put it very simply, in one line, authentic stories are those that manage to reach our heart, right? They touch us in ways that we never expected them to. And what I've done here is created a 5-step way to, if you could go back.
Sorry.
So step 1 is to confront one's reality. You could think about this from the perspective of making an impact, making a change happen. So, if we don't confront our reality, we don't know what we are talking about. Once that confrontation happens, we look at accepting the truth. Step 3 is juicing the truth, letting the things sort of trickle down in different directions, different trajectories, and then all of those come together to create some meaning in our minds, which in turn leads to some measure of change happening. But all of this has to, start from us, as the individual. Next slide, please. So of authentic storytelling and meaning. So what does this mean? So the currency of any story is not the truth, but the meaning. And by this, Patrick Risenborough and Doyle Canning of the Center for Story-Based Strategy in Oakland, California, what they're trying to say is that as a spectator to an outside experience, be it a film, be it art installation, a design, or a fashion show, whatever it may be that you're experiencing, the process of meaning making happens once we kind of bring in our own experiences and our own cultural references. So next slide, please. So this then, brings us to the point that why is it that, storytelling is important, and authentic stories for impact, why should we be telling those, So this again is a very simple view on things. There is a certain seductiveness, attractiveness to authentic storytelling. Authentic stories help us in suspending our disbelief. Authentic stories are a part of human consciousness. They've been around, in all our respective cultures since time immemorial, like the Vedas and the, passing on of natural, histories, oral histories. So that tradition has been continuing for ages. Then, stories are a part of how we think, feel, remember, imagine, relate, and create change, And then last but not the least, authentic stories always tend to work. You can tell immediately if the story is connecting with you or not. So next slide, please, Rikki. So this brings us to the point that, like now what authentic stories are. Now what, constitutes them. But where is it that you start plotting your stories? So it could be like in Katja's case, a coffee plantation, a family that works in that. In Rikki's case, it was, a chat sitting across the table. And, the interesting thing was that the camera was pointed at them, but none of them was addressing the camera. So, what is it that we are trying to address by points of intervention? So, when we can tell authentic stories in places where the problem is occurring, according to Canning and Risenborough, these 5 points of intervention can help determine the place where the story needs to be told. So the first and foremost is the point of production. This could be a manufacturing facility, this could be a factory. Place 2 is the point of destruction. For instance, in our case, in the waste to value case, point of destruction is an auto scrap yard or a place where we collect our waste from. Then the point of consumption, is this something, you can capture your audience's reactions, when they're actually physically interacting with your product at a retail store. Then there is a point of decision, which is invariably the headquarters of a company or an organization. And place number 5 is the points of assumption. It could be of symbolic value. Is it something that is going against the prevalent norm or a religious belief? So next slide, please. So then what is an authentic storytelling action is essentially once you identify what that point of intervention is, the action that you take is the authentic storytelling action. This could be distributing a leaflet, making a speaker, taking an interview, talking to media, experiencing an art installation that reclaims a public space, So next slide, please. And I'm just running through these mental models because, like I said, we tried packing in too much information in our little 90-minute session. So now we come to the juncture where we, know the point of intervention. But now how do we make our storytelling, authentic storytelling actionable? What are the next steps? So now you need to determine what is the kind of action that you want people to take. Next point is you want to be able to mix some struggles with some successes. You want to have a clear call to action. Some of these points, will overlap with what Katja and Rikki have mentioned in their presentations, because that is the nature of the beast. These are feelings and, points and best practices that are common between all our experiences. Then you want to make your stories shareable. So by this, what I mean is instead of cramming like a 20-minute piece into one video file, perhaps want to break that down into different components, so that each and every one of those components is an easy to consume 2-minute or a 1.5-minute film that, or it could be any other medium that, you can tell small components and fragmented stories that then come together to make a whole. And then you want to be able to connect the why. Why is it that your audience is supporting you? So for instance, the green consumer for us at Jaggery, this is a conscious buyer, who knows that he wants to do something about the people and the planet. So, he deliberately chooses to buy from a sustainable brand. And then, lastly, you want to offer hope. In anything that we make, you want to have smiling faces, or you want to have affirmation, positive energy kind of, coming out of the piece. Next slide, please, Rikki. So then, what are the kind of elements? What are the components that constitute a good, authentic story? So, to tell you honestly, this is a process of, and it's a hard process of R&D and hit and miss. There are no shortcuts here to creating an authentic story, which is good. But there are elements that I can share with you that you can, take to your work that, might inform the creation of a good story. So first and foremost, you want to establish, a point of navigation, like a protagonist that will take you through the piece. Identify what the protagonist wants, or what is it that they're trying to challenge. Is it that they're trying to challenge an existing norm, or does the protagonist want to accomplish something that is monumental? Then you want to always bring a kind of your story arc should always close. It should never be open-ended, so that the process of formation of meaning is complete. Then you want to decode the story. For instance, in our case, when we go to a salvage yard, we bring in a raw material which has already led a first life. For instance, a car seat belt, and then we source it, we bring it to our workshop, clean it, process it, and then make a product. In that process, we are fusing a new lease of life into that old material. So we are able to decode the story at some level for the audience. Next slide, please. So what are the different categories of stories that one can tell? So no two stories and no two materials will be alike. There will always be nuances that kind of differentiate one from the other. And broadly speaking, there are 6 story clusters that are prevalent in storytelling ecosystems. One is the nature of the challenge story, and so I'll turn to a mainstream example of Rocky Balboa pitched against someone much bigger and stronger than him, highlighting the people, if you remember, the coach was an integral part of shaping his career, how the career is going to pan out in the long run. So, that's an important part to consider, consider all the constituencies of your ecosystem. And if there is a challenge that you're working towards, then you want to maybe let that be the hero of the piece. Then the creation story, who started the project, initiative, or the organization. For instance, in the case of for the lack of a better example, we were discussing this yesterday. In the case of Catalyst Market, the story is riding on Amanda's personal journey. So we will want to talk about the fact that she's been, like she was Michigan born, but she's now Sri Lanka based, and the kind of trials and tribulations and successes that she had along the way of creating Catalyst Market. Then there is a success story, like for instance, Childline would come to mind. This is something that didn't exist before Jeru set this up, many years back. And so imagine now anywhere in the country that you are, you can pick up the phone and call a number, and that number will provide a service that can cater to your Childline, your needs for homelessness, or anything child abuse related. So that is a success story. So you can route your messaging through that. Then there is a value system story. For instance, the values. Just go back a slide, please. Just go front. Just go up a bit. I think you hit the button accidentally. Yeah, go up a bit. Go up. Yeah, just here. So then there is a room for improvement story. For instance, like if you realize in sustainable manufacturing or sustainable, creation, there are different compliances and different certifications that are available, but that may not be the end all be all of the brand. So for instance, if we apply for a B Corp certification, there is room for improvement for us to get a C2C, cradle to cradle certification. So the story can be routed through that in different segments, that here is a brand that is trying to get different certifications, and the trials and tribulations under each of those can then become a part of the story constituency. Then, lastly, there is the vision story. For instance, you want to talk about eradicating homelessness from the world, So, somebody starts off with a vision. So you could set that as the tone. So next slide, please. So now I'd like to take you through a quick video in which we will go dumpster diving with Jaggery. Some of the references of our conversations up until now: waste to value, sourcing from wasteland, bringing it to our workshop, cleaning it, processing it, and eventually ending up with some products that then can be circulated around the world to talk about climate change, social equity, regenerative design, and going back to the theory of change. So please please play the video for us. Are you able to find it, Rikki? So while that comes up, this might seem all too heavy and theoretical, but believe you me, once you understand, how to navigate these conceptual models, it becomes really easy. So volume, and you want to unmute yourself so that the audience can hear you. And please start from the beginning. Unmute yourself so that the audience can hear you, please.
There we go. Okay.
When we founded the company in 2015, sustainability wasn't a fashionable buzzword as it now is. Some of the key issues that we are trying to solve with Jaggery are climate change, social equity, and we do this through a regenerative design lens. So what this means is that हम ऐसी कुछ कड़ियाँ जोड़ते हैं जो कि हमारे इंडियन इकोसिस्टम में शुरू से ही रही हैं. फॉर इंस्टेंस द कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ जुगाड़, जैसे जो पुरानी चीज़ें हैं उनको हम एक नई लाइफ देते हैं. सो वो हमने जर्नी जैसे स्टार्ट की विद प्रोडक्ट्स दैट लेंड देमसेल्व्स टू बिकमिंग रियली ड्यूरेबल आउटसाइड मटेरियल. सो हमने जब सोचा कि हम बैग्स बनाएंगे तो वहाँ पे हमें सीट बेल्ट मिली. तो उस सीट बेल्ट को हम क्या करते हैं, कलेक्ट करते हैं और सीट बेल्ट को हम अपने वर्कशॉप पे लेके आते हैं, जो कि कई बार काफ़ी घिसी हुई हालत में होती है. उसको हम क्लीन करते हैं और उसको फिर हम ड्राइंग बोर्ड पे लेके आते हैं एंड वी कंबाइन सीट बेल्ट्स इन मल्टीपल्स. और बड़ा पैनल बनाने के लिए हमें उसको डीकंस्ट्रक्ट करना पड़ता है एंड वी हैव टू ऑफन जॉइन सीट बेल्ट्स एज क्विल्ट. फिर एक आइडेंटिफाई करते हैं कि किस टेम्पलेट में, किस पैटर्न में ये अच्छी तरह फिट होगा. ये करने के बाद देन आवर फैब्रिकेशन टीम इज द चैंपियन ऑफ दिस प्रोसेस. सो दिस एंटायर प्रोसेस इज कॉल्ड अपसाइक्लिंग, रीपर्पसिंग, रेस्क्यूइंग. तो एंड दिस इज अ पार्ट ऑफ अ सर्कुलर डिजाइन आइडियोलॉजी. और अलग अलग जगह हम लोग अपने प्रोजेक्ट्स को लॉन्च करने की कोशिश करते हैं थ्रू डिफरेंट कलेक्शंस.
We try and make products, which are usable for many people. For example, college students, the people going to office, ladies going to grocery shopping.
We've managed to divert around 10,500 kilometers of car seat belts from the landfills of Delhi NCR. Imagine the impact we would have if like-minded organizations from around the world were to join our cause. wouldn't we be able to leave a greener world for our next generation? Thank you so much, Rikki, for playing that video. If you could pull back the slides, I'll just talk about a few other things. So that was one route, that you saw, up until now, we've been talking a lot about qualitative measurement, how do we measure impact qualitatively? But when we had set up this group with the Catalyst Market, the intention was to have a blended kind of an approach, that takes both a qualitative and a quantitative approach in mind. And, with that, I just have one or two slides and a quick video to show that combines stories with data. So statistics can help, if you could go back, please. Statistics can help bridge the gap between individual stories and a collective concern. So what we mean here is that you want to be able to give meaning to your data so that there's something in it for your audience to chew on. Keep the issues within the reach of the audience, so always keep it simple, keep it simple and silly, just something that people can identify with. Use data and authentic storytelling to demonstrate the impact. So hard facts, numbers come in. Use numbers that people can easily grab. So this is something that's called social math. So next slide, please. Now we'd like to show you a quick video from the People's Report from the ecosystem, Catalyst ecosystem. And if you could just play that video. And thanks, Vicky.
Oh, just a second. With so many different videos, it's a...
I'll tell you which folder. It's in the...
No, I've got it. I just have to...
No worries, take your time. It's all good. Yep. Thank you, Rikki. Thanks, Rikki. Yeah. This brings us to the question, what are the different formats that one can use, from the constellation of storytelling formats that exist out there. So this is pretty self-explanatory, but I'll just highlight a few top ones that have come out that are trend setting. So social media, and within social media there are different formats, and these keep evolving, with Instagram and all these guys experimenting, reels, and within reels there are new formats. So one has to, the onus is on oneself to kind of keep up to speed with all these things. And this collection always keeps on growing in augmented reality, artificial intelligence. These are areas where social storytelling will also intersect in the days to come. And video games also another area. Then meta, the second world, all those kind of things will kind of become very important, and important to kind of leverage in the years to come. So next slide, please. So then how do we, we've made a lovely video, we've made a fantastic campaign, but how is it then that we measure this campaign? What is the success of a campaign? So there's one interesting thing to consider here is that in and of itself, an authentic story can play two roles, right? It could be a story, the carrier of the message, or on the other hand, it could be the tool through which you measure impact of the story, right? So, but you can only do this if you have, some of the 5 steps that I'm going to mention kind of chalked out from the beginning. So you want to identify what your goals are, set off with a clear idea that this is what I want to achieve. You want to be able to set the metrics and the methods so that, you don't falter along the way. Then you want to be able to measure for learning, don't just, conduct a campaign that you don't want to measure. If you want to make a video or any other campaign that you want to just run to satisfy your whims and fancies, that's fine, but you won't be able to evaluate it if you don't have the goal set up for that. Then we want to always crunch the data and learn from that. What is it that we are trying to, like juice the truth, what we had discussed in the beginning. We want to be able to juice the truth. And then we can do this juicing by also gathering a lot of stories from, the different participants of the campaign. Like, for instance, in this case, we are gathering stories by engaging with our audience and trying to understand where is it that you're coming from? Why is it that some model works over the other? So with this in mind, if you could go to the next screen, there are a lot of social.
Gautam, if you can wrap it up, we're already at 2:30 my time, and Mikey hasn't had a chance to speak.
Yeah, sure. Give me 1 minute. So, there's a really interesting organization in, I think they're New York based. They go by the name Animating Democracy, and they have different kinds of social impact indicators that they've come out with, that you can work with. So it's kind of like an infographic, but they're also interactive, and they help understand the journey that you've taken. You can, enter it at any vantage point. So there's something called the continuum of impact. If you're interested, please check it out. I'll also share the link in the chat box during Mikey's. Next slide, please. And then, eventually I just want to, culminate my piece with the idea. And, I would like to urge people to, break out of their siloed thinking and start exploring linkages between different frameworks, because essentially what, we want to do to bring about any measure of change is to borrow from different networks. So essentially what we want you to do is to kind of create a network of different frameworks that play with each other. So with that, I'd like to pass the baton on to Mikey, who will take us through producing your story.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Gautam. Thank you, Katja. Thank you, Rikki, for those quite detailed presentations there. And obviously we don't have a heaps of time today, and we've gone a little bit over time. So for those who cannot stay around, I just wanted to mention that the content in the slides will be sent out afterwards. and we are recording this session. So if you do need to go now, please do, and don't feel bad about that. I really appreciate that you've come for this point in the session. I think I'll try and do it in 15 minutes. I'd had 20 minutes, but you know, a lot of our materials are online. So if you have the extra 15 minutes today, then I hope you get some value from what I can share with you today. So yeah, my name's Mikey. I'm joining you today from Gadigal country in Australia. And we have this cultural tradition here in Australia where we acknowledge the lands of the people of the land of where we're joining from. So I hope all of you have that sort of connection to where you've come from and ancestry that goes alongside that. So we always want to say that we acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation on whose land I'm joining you from today. And we want to pay our respects to any elders or perhaps other First Nations people might be joining today. So with that acknowledgement, I'll just also introduce myself. Digital Storytellers is actually a storytelling social enterprise, meaning that we have made our business in helping other people to tell stories. So I guess that's why the team here at Catalyst 2030 reached out and asked if we could join this presentation today. We have a lot of you know, the theories and the models, as well as some very practical things, but I'm going to be focusing on the practical aspects for the next 15 minutes. So with that introduction, let's jump right in. Yeah, if you could go to the next slide, Rikki, that'd be fantastic. So that's just a shot of some of the people on my team that I get to work with, and we'll go to the story canvas. Yeah, this is a #1 tool that I wanted to share with you all today. I'm going to put a link into the chat. A lot of it we've talked about is planning your story today. So we've created this tool. You might recognize it as the business model canvas, except it's been adapted for storytelling. And you know, I don't have a heap of time today, but I did want to cover 2 areas of the story canvas that I do feel are very much worth focusing on. So if you can go ahead to the next slide, Rikki. The #1 area is, why are you telling this story? So that's the purpose of the story. Why does it need to be told? Now, all the speakers have spoken to the importance of social impact storytelling today. We're all using it as a tool to affect change around us. That should really be the seed of the story that you're working on. And I think really focusing on that issue and making a great choice about the purpose of your story is so important. The other aspect of the story canvas I wanted to highlight, and this will be on the next slide, Rikki, thank you, it would be the audience of the story. I think that we know that we have great stories as social entrepreneurs, but are we spending enough time thinking about the people that we want to reach? And you know, I noticed that funding was one of the #1 issues highlighted here. So I would hope that a number of you are thinking about your customers when you tell the story, because if you're a social entrepreneur, you're trading to do the impact work that you do, trading or doing business. In Australia, we often say trading. So I would really want to highlight the primary audience of all of our storytelling should be those customers that we want to reach. And as much as we know about those customers as our audience, the more effective our storytelling can be. I also put in there secondary audience as a way of thinking about other kinds of audience members who might be around a story, or they might be supporters or government policymakers or philanthropists that might be supporting your work. But it's good to take them in as part of the audience as well. And one last thing to highlight there, you know, how do we want to shift our audiences? And it's a way to break up the audiences into segments here. So the unaware people is people who don't know about a story at all, very hard to reach. Aware people might know about the cause or issue or impact that you're trying to create in your enterprise. Engaged would be actually a really easier audience to reach. These are the people who might know about your issue. They might care about similar other things in what you're trying to achieve. But really, it's the champions that we can really focus on as social enterprises. Those who would help us tell our story for us is one of the most valuable resources we have if we don't have a lot of money to necessarily buy audience or do big advertisements or spend money on expensive films. You really want to work with your champion audience and get them a story that helps you to get that story to other people. Okay, so I wanted to just paint that out. Now I'm going to jump ahead now to one of the things we do at Digital Storytellers is we also train people to use their own mobile phones to make their stories themselves. And we have a course that we call Stories for Impact. It's like a workshop course. If you go on our website, you'll see the workshops link and you would get to that. Now, we train people to tell stories in a particular simple way. And I wanted to just cover some aspects, which would be some rules of how you can work in storytelling. And we're going to play just a minute of this 3-minute video to demonstrate one way you could do storytelling by yourself with your own mobile, Rikki. So if you wouldn't mind playing that video, that'd be great.
Okay, are we going to do that? We're going to do the short
Short
one?
one, definitely. Yeah, I don't want to use up too much of people's time today. So yeah.
Let's see.
You got a lot of windows there, friend.
I do.
All right.
The awesome thing about local clothing is that you can be connected to it and it can make an even more meaningful garment. Well, the shawl that I wear, I've gone to that farm, I visited the farmer, I know the name of the alpaca. It's one step up from, I really love this garment, it makes me feel great, to I really love this garment, it reminds me of all these places and people that are really important to me as well.
Great, thanks, Rikki. So Fiber Shed's a great little story. That's someone who's done our workshop course and made their own videos. I want you to know about Fiber Shed because I think it's a really cool social enterprise. But what I also want you to take away is the format that you saw there. You heard a video interview as the underlying voiceover with shots over the top. So I'm just going to run through real quickly a couple of methods of how you can do that and some top tips if you're going to go about making some content using your own mobile phone. So next slide, Rikki, please. Thank you. A lot of the basic stuff is here in this particular slide about just getting the phone actually ready to shoot with. And, you know, the typical top 10 mistakes that we see is like, you know, keeping the lens clean, shooting horizontal versus vertical. Although if you're producing for other mediums or TikTok or Instagram, for instance, you might want to do square. It's not great to use the digital zoom, and make sure you have that phone device really prepared. So you're not out in the field sort of, you know, got everything ready and you've sort of messed up by not having enough space or battery in what you're doing. So a couple of those basic tips for just shooting if you're going to do the work yourself. We'll go on to the next slide, Rikki. And look, one of the key things that most people don't think of when they're out there is sound. My voice is carrying lots of my emotion, the passion for storytelling, and the meaning, you know, and you're getting a feeling from me that's not even the words. It's just the way that I communicate in my voice. What I want you to do, more importantly, is to invest in the sound that you capture in the field. And the best way you can do that is by getting a microphone. They're not too expensive. I know that in some countries, these products might be viewed a little bit expensive, but I really think it's worth the investment, especially if you've already got the smartphone to work with. At present, I am using a lapel mic, which I'll just tap and you'll hear a thud, thud, okay? And what that's doing is making sure that the audio for this is not my laptop, but it's right next to my chest, and you can hear my voice a lot more clearly because of it. I hope it's coming through really crisply when I'm speaking today. That is something I'm just using with my computer setup. I also have this Rode Go wireless kit here. Ooh, let's see if I can show it. This is a receiver, and just over here is a transmitter. Okay, the Rode Go's are a really neat little kit that work with mobiles because they're wireless. It is a few $100s Australian, which is might be inaccessible for some people, but if you can get your hands on that kit, I love it. It works with Zoom meetings, but it'll also work really well with recording in the field. Now, you heard an interview there with Rachel as the base for the voiceover. So we record that interview, you know, prompt her with a number of questions, and we use, you're moving me ahead here, Rikki?
No, totally accidental.
Okay, no problem. Getting the cane to keep moving here, which is good. So interviews are the base thing there, setting it up in a particular way and making sure that microphone, you can see it on Rachel now. And if you're going to shoot an interview, we can go to the next slide, Rikki. Really, this is one of the key skills for getting that interview done, is to set it up with this rule of thirds. You know, this will be in the slides, but to cover a couple of the rules here, there's a way that you'll see all news reports or standard interviews created. And once you know this, you start seeing it everywhere, the way that interviews are created. This is the standard way to make sure you divide that screen into a rule of thirds. And then also, have a speech bubble, do the eye line, choose a background that has some kind of meaning. So for me, this is Aboriginal artwork from Australia, which an artist who's local to where I'm coming to you from has created this for me. So I purposely choose that to put them in the background to pass along a story to you. And I see that Rikki and Katja on my screen here have really interesting backgrounds as well in terms of where they're coming from. So you can communicate something with that background. Do consider that when you're filming something. We'll jump ahead to the next slide, please. Okay. So yeah, I mentioned the background and framing, the sound check. One of the things you can do when you're interviewing someone is just use those open-ended questions, not yes or no questions like, what time is it today? It's more like, how did you feel about that situation? Or what kind of, what's an open-ended question? It's something that just doesn't engender a yes or no answer, okay, in terms of that. And then you really have to give time for someone to speak, okay, when you're interviewing them. Okay, and also just for the purposes of the audio and the edit, don't talk. Really let that voice for somebody else come through as it progresses inside the interview. Okay, a couple of those things will allow the interview to progress and for that person to get more and more comfortable over time. And I think once they kind of get a little, comfortable with whatever cameras or something being pointed at them, you'll find that you'll get to a really authentic place that someone can communicate inside of an interview. But that does take a little bit of time and comfort. And it means you need to be prepared coming into that situation. We'll jump to the next slide. Cutaways are those overlay shots that help show a story. I'm sure you've all heard the maxim, show, don't tell a story. So really, you can never have enough of these cutaways or B-roll when you're producing, the video stories. And really, this is a lot more, where more effort needs to go when you're capturing something. So on the next slide, I think it's just a quick tips thing is to do different variety of shots, wide, mediums, and tights. You'll hear filmmakers or people would call it wide, mediums, or tights. Okay, wide's giving the context of something, mediums giving us a little more closer detail, and tight shots really going for that intricate detail to communicate a story. So with those visuals in mind, make sure that you're filming those three, wide, medium, tight, so you have enough of those cutaways to populate your story. Okay, we'll jump ahead to the edit tools, and I know I'm coming up to my 15 minutes, so I'm going to just cover this really quickly. We'll jump ahead to editing 101. There's a process, then we'll leave that in the slides. Look, top tips from editing. Next slide, please, Rikki. Is we use a program called KineMaster if you're going to be editing on the phone. It's quite a neat little program, mostly because it has this thing called non-linear editing, which is a fancy way of saying I can put an interview in one track and I can put cutaways over the top and I can have music underneath. And you can do this all on your mobile phone. So KineMaster is my top recommendation for a mobile editing program. Now, if you don't have the time necessary to learn all those skills, you can use a couple other programs. We'll jump ahead to the Lumen 5 slide, please, Rikki. Okay, that's the 2 slides past this. Yep. Lumen 5 is this app that's just kind of crazy. You can just put a website in or a blog piece. It will grab the images and the text and make up a video for you. Okay, I kid you not. It's that simple, actually. So I highly recommend it for those who don't have a lot of time or resources. But what you'll need to do in a story, you'll need to write it up and create some images alongside that. So even if you don't have video, okay, then what Lumen 5 will do is take images that are on that webpage. And even if you don't have images, it will take the text and guess what images to put in there for you. Doesn't always do such a good job because it's, artificial intelligence making up these things. But for us resource poor or time poor folk, oh my God, what a quick way to create videos that can go on social media. So I wanted to just pass along that tip to you. Next slide has some recommendations about free sources of video stills and music that you can use in those edits. So I think I won't go into detail with those because you don't have too much time. Really, I think it's going to all be here in the slides for those people as well. And Cameron, I'll talk to you about Adobe Rush a little bit later, but it's one of Adobe's new apps for producing. I'd suggest giving it a try. It does a lot of these automatic things as well. you know, we can get a little bit caught up in the technical aspects of storytelling, but I think the point today is that if you keep it simple, keep it sharp, and just remember that you do have, as a social entrepreneur, a really important story to tell that the world needs to hear. It's about the change you're creating. It's about the way that you're doing it as a business. It's about the people that you're bringing that impact to. If you have those basic ingredients, all this technology and everything else doesn't matter so much. Just get it out there is the one thing that I think I can leave you with today. If you need more strategy or insight, I'm sure any one of the people here in the panel would love to spend more time with you to help guide you today. So I'll leave it there. If you want to follow up with us, we'll just jump ahead to the next step slide, please, Rikki. There's a Facebook group where we love seeing your story canvases. We receive questions there, and you can hang out with other people who've been in our courses at Digital Storytellers. We do have an online course if you want to go down the road of producing your own video. We have a fully online course you can do at your own pace, which will guide you through the deeper details of what I've been sharing here today. That's all available on our website. And the next slide has contact details, and we'll go in the slide pack. Back to you guys.
Thank you, Mikey. And we appreciate so many of you sticking with us past our scheduled time. We wanted to wrap up today's section with, let me go back. Rather than summarizing, trying to summarize what is a lot of information, I wanted to ask each of our panelists to share their personal biggest takeaway from our session. And while they're sharing, I would invite the participants to share your own biggest takeaway in the chat. So in the order you appear on my screen, Katja, what would you say your biggest takeaway is? You need to unmute.
Yeah, well, I highlighted it in my presentation, and the co-panelists also more or less explicitly said it, and also this also came back from some comments in the chat. I think as the storytellers, as enterprises, as businesses, as NGOs, we're in a privileged position to tell. Too often we're in the position that we're telling other people's stories of local producers, farmers, etc. That's a privilege, and we should treat it as such. It comes with a responsibility. So we really should be mindful of telling their stories in a respectful way that preserves their dignity and that does justice to their capabilities of co-creating their own best futures.
Mikey, what would you say your biggest takeaway is?
Yeah, I have been, we've been grappling with ethical storytelling over here, and I was really pleased to hear more calling for that from the panelists today, of how to make sure that we're not extracting stories from the people that we benefit. Because if we did that, we'd be pretty much repeating the mistakes of capitalism without bringing back the benefit of those who share the stories with us. So I saw that as a thread, that something that Digital Storytellers has been thinking about more lately amongst our fellow storytellers here in Australia. And I'd like to call for more of that thinking for us in order to tell the news stories of the world. We need to make sure that we are not extracting. Yeah, thank you.
Gautam.
Yeah, for me, the learnings were immense. You know, I really loved Mikey's business, you know, how he's adapted the business canvas model to the story canvas. I think that's so innovative. And, you know, we stumbled upon it much earlier, even before we invited him to be a part of the gig. So that for me is a really, really strong takeaway. And, you know, I think I'm going to share my story canvas with you, Mikey, for you and your team to dissect and come back to us with your, you know, thoughts on that. And just on a kind of a spiritual and a conceptual note, you know, what I'd like to bring to the table also, and for other people to take away, is that we have our internal belief, right? And then we have the outside external forces pushing against them every day. So in doing so, the space that comes up is where authentic meaning lies. So the force of the external force against your internal belief. So here is your internal belief, here is the external force, and the space in between is where you can find meaning. So find your stories, authentic stories, in that kind of dialogue between your internal and external beliefs. So over to you, Rikki.
And what I would say, my biggest takeaway is that it is worth the time and effort for me to do the planning and editing, so that I have a clear intention with my storytelling, especially when it's focusing on social impact. That even though I may have limited time and resources, it's worth it to spend the time to plan it well, using the principles that have been, and it may be planning after the fact, but using editing tools, it's possible to do that. So I will turn it over to Gautam now to let everybody know what our next step is around storytelling.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you everyone from the bottom of our heart, for you to take our time and stay with us in the extended session. So there are essentially 3 clear takeaways for you to engage with us in the future. If you would like to, if you come from a background of creation, if you're a creator, then you could participate in co-creating this document. That's number 1. If you think that you want to apply this collection of best practices in your work, then you please let us know, and we will try and arrange a conversation with you one-on-one to understand your needs. And lastly, if you want to receive updates from the larger impact group at Catalyst Market, you let us know, and then we will add you to our newsletter, and you'll start receiving updates from us periodically. So please leave your name and email if you still haven't done that in the chat, and we'd love to stay connected with you. Thank you so much.
And we would encourage everyone to take a screenshot of this screen and share this session in your own social media channels, and insert your biggest takeaway from the session, and encourage other people to participate. As Gautam mentioned, we will be, sorry, I keep doing that. We will be sending out a follow-up that will include both the call to action and how you'd like to continue to engage, as well as the PDF of the slide deck and the link to the recording, so that you can continue to, you can go back and review the material that we all had to rush through. So it doesn't end here. This is just the catalyst for the toolkit of best practices that we are launching. So thank you so much. Reminder, if you haven't done it, please put your email in the chat. If you can stick around and put your biggest takeaway in the chat, that would be terrific. And if anybody has any last comments or questions, we'd certainly be happy to take them. Any raised hands?
We could even nominate amongst ourselves, we could randomly pick on attendee and see if they want to talk about something.
Or if people want to leave, I mean, we also want to be respectful of your time. We're really, I mean, I'm personally, and I think I'm speaking for every one of the panelists, I'm thrilled that almost all of you have stayed on and are still here. And yeah, it has been really rewarding. And I feel really grateful for all of you being here and sharing your thoughts and your opinions, speaking in the breakout rooms and on the plenary stage, in the chat, etc. So we really hope to keep that conversation with you going in the upcoming months. Thank you so much for being here.